You are standing in a grocery store. It is a Saturday afternoon. The lights are that flat, buzzing white, the kind that makes everything look slightly unreal, like a memory of a place rather than the place itself. There is music playing, but you could not name the song. Something soft and shapeless, leaking out of the ceiling. Around you, other people are shopping. They move with purpose. They put things in carts. They seem to know what they came here for. You do not. You have been standing in this aisle for 3 minutes, maybe 4. You came here because you needed groceries. Or at least, you think you did. You wrote a list this morning, but you left it on the counter. And now you are here, surrounded by hundreds of options, and you cannot pick up a single thing. It is not that the options are bad. There is pasta. There are eggs. There are 17 kinds of peanut butter arranged in a wall of labels, each one promising to be slightly better than the last. The options are fine. The options are, if anything, overwhelming in their fineness. The problem is not the options. The problem is you, or that is what it feels like. You are standing in a well-lit store, surrounded by everything you could possibly need, and the only thing missing is the ability to want any of it. It is not hunger that is absent. It is something deeper than hunger, some mechanism that used to take in the world and say, yes, that one, I want that, has gone quiet. You are not choosing between options. You are standing in front of options, waiting for a feeling that does not arrive. And here is the part that makes your chest tight. It is not about the groceries. It is the same blankness that hits you when someone asks where you want to go for dinner. The same fog that descends in a meeting when your manager says, "What do you think?" The same paralysis that finds you on a Sunday evening, scrolling through streaming services, not watching anything, not choosing anything, just dragging your thumb across glass, waiting for something to choose you. You are not lazy. You are not stupid. You are not ungrateful for having too many choices. Something happened to you. Something so gradual and so quiet that you never noticed it happening. And it left you here, in this fluorescent aisle, with an empty cart and a mind that has forgotten how to want. It is not that you are broken. It is that you were bent slowly, repeatedly, by 1,000 small hands. And you bent so well, so quietly, so completely, that you forgot what straight looked like. And today, we are going to talk about how that happened. There is a signal in your brain called error-related negativity, ERN for short. It fires in the anterior cingulate cortex, roughly 50 to 100 milliseconds. After you make a mistake, before you even consciously register that something went wrong, your brain has already sounded the alarm. It is, in evolutionary terms, extraordinarily useful. It is the reason our ancestors learned not to eat the red berries twice. It is the reason you pull your hand back from a hot stove before the pain fully arrives. ERN is your brain, quality control department. Fast, automatic, and ruthless. Now, here is what happens when you grow up in an environment where you are corrected constantly. The ERN signal gets louder, not a little louder, dramatically louder. Researchers have found that individuals with a history of harsh or unpredictable criticism show amplified ERN responses, not just to actual errors, but to the anticipation of errors. The alarm system does not wait for you to make a mistake. It fires preemptively. It fires when you are about to speak. It fires when you are considering an opinion. It fires when you reach for something on a shelf and a voice in your head whispers, "Are you sure that is the right one?" Your brain did not get slower. Your brain got faster at stopping you. Your mind is not a computer that lost processing power. Your mind is an animal in a cage that learned, through trial and repetition, exactly which walls are electrified. It doesn't move slower. It moves in a smaller and smaller circle. And after enough time in that circle, it forgets that the rest of the cage even exists. Martin Seligman ran an experiment that would reshape our understanding of motivation. Dogs were placed in a chamber where they received small electric shocks. One group could stop the shocks by pressing a panel. The other group could not. The shocks were random, inescapable, uncontrollable. Later, both groups were placed in a new chamber where escape was easy. The first group figured it out immediately. The second group did not even try. They lay down. They took the shocks, not because they could escape, but because they had learned deeply and neurologically that their actions did not matter. Seligman called this learned helplessness. But the name is slightly misleading. The dogs did not learn to be helpless. They learned that trying was dangerous. They learned that the safest thing a body can do in an unpredictable environment is nothing. And if you have ever sat in a meeting with a perfectly good idea and chosen not to say it, if you have ever written an email and deleted it 3 times before sending a version that says almost nothing, if you have ever been asked, "What do you think?" and felt your mind go flat, like a lake with no wind, you know exactly what those dogs learned, not helplessness, stillness as survival. There is one more piece of neuroscience that matters here, and it is perhaps the most devastating. Your brain has a system called the default mode network, the DMN. It activates when you are not focused on a specific task. It is the part of you that daydreams, that wonders, that makes unexpected connections between unrelated ideas. It is, in a very real sense, the seat of your creative intelligence, the part of your mind that generates new thoughts, rather than simply processing existing ones. Studies have shown that individuals raised in highly critical or correction-heavy environments show suppressed DMN activity, the network that produces original thought, the part of you that makes you you, learns to stay quiet. Not because it is damaged, because it was taught that its outputs are unwelcome. The thought forms. The alarm fires. The thought dies. The thought forms. The alarm fires. The thought dies. Every single time, and you call it brain fog. You call it, I am just not a creative person. You call it, I don't. Do you know? What do you think? You call it standing in aisle 7 for 4 minutes, unable to pick up a jar of pasta sauce. But here is the question that neuroscience alone cannot answer. Who taught your brain to flinch? Was it one person, one teacher, one parent, or was it something much larger, something built into the very architecture of the world you grew up in? In 1763, Frederick the Great of Prussia signed the General Landschulreglement, one of the first compulsory education laws in European history. The system it created was not designed to produce thinkers. It was designed to produce soldiers and factory workers, obedient citizens who followed instructions, respected authority. And this is the critical part, who understood that there was one correct answer to every question, and it belonged to the person at the front of the room. Raise your hand. Wait to be called on. Do not speak out of turn. Show your work. There is a right way and a wrong way. Your job is to find the right way. My job is to correct you when you find the wrong one. That model, with remarkably few modifications, is still the blueprint for most education systems on the planet. You spent somewhere between 12 and 20 years inside of it, and every day it taught you the same lesson. Your first instinct is probably wrong. Check it against the authority. Wait for confirmation before you trust yourself. You graduated, you got a job, but the lesson didn't leave. It just changed clothes. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes our era as the achievement society, a world where the external disciplinarian has been replaced by something far more efficient. You no longer need a teacher to correct you. You have internalized the teacher. You are your own quality control department, your own performance reviewer, your own harshest critic. Every thought passes through an internal audit before it reaches your lips. Is this smart enough? Will this sound stupid? What if I am wrong? What if they think less of me? The correction is no longer coming from outside. It is coming from inside the house. And here is the insidious part. Because the corrector is you, there is no escape. You cannot leave the classroom. You cannot quit the job. The performance review runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including when you are standing in a supermarket trying to choose between 2 brands of tomato sauce and your hand one. Team move because some part of you is convinced that even this choice can be wrong. And then came the final layer, social media. You post a thought, you share an opinion, you put a small piece of yourself into the world, and the world responds with a number. Likes, shares, comments, or, worse, silence. The algorithm does not argue with you. It does not say you are wrong. It simply makes you invisible. Your thought sinks to the bottom. No one engages, no one responds. And you learn, without anyone ever saying a word to you, that what you had to say was not worth hearing. This is correction without a corrector. Punishment without a punisher. A courtroom with no judge, no jury. Just a verdict delivered in real time, measured in metrics. And this is the final irony. You live in a civilization that has produced more choice, More freedom, more options than any society in human history. An entire supermarket of possibility, stretching in every direction. And you are standing in the middle of it, paralyzed, not because there is too much to choose from, but because something was taken from you long before you walked through those automatic doors. The teacher who said, "That is not how we do it." The parent who said, "Don't be ridiculous." The manager who said, "Let me think about that," and never brought it up again. The post that got 0 likes. The idea you pitched that was met with silence. The 1,000 micro-corrections that, one by one, turned down the volume on the voice inside you until it became so faint that when someone asks you what you want, truly want, you hear nothing. It is not that you are broken. It is that you are bent by a classroom, by an algorithm, and you bent so well that you forgot you were bending at all. There is a moment in Siren Kierkegaard's work where he describes anxiety not as a pathology, but as a signal. He calls it the dizziness of freedom. The vertigo you feel when you stand at the edge of possibility and realize that you could do anything and no one is going to tell you what to choose. Think about that for a second. What if the blankness you feel, that paralysis in the cereal aisle, that fog in the meeting room, that inability to name what you want, is not the absence of intelligence? What if it is the presence of something the correction could never fully kill? A person who has been completely domesticated, whose instincts have been fully overwritten, does not hesitate. They reach for the first thing they see. They say the first thing that seems safe. They follow the path of least resistance, without friction, without pause, without that small, uncomfortable moment of, but what do I actually think? You still have that moment. It frustrates you. It makes you feel slow and stupid and broken, but Kierkegaard would tell you something different. He would tell you that the fact that you can still feel confused about what you want, the fact that the question has not been fully extinguished, means that somewhere inside you, beneath all the scar tissue, the capacity for genuine choice is still alive. Your hesitation is not your weakness. Your hesitation is your freedom, trying to breathe. The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott spent his career studying what happens when the environment does not allow a child to be spontaneous. His conclusion was precise and devastating. The child develops what he called a false self, an adaptive layer designed to meet the expectations of the world. The false self is competent. It is agreeable, it performs well. It says, "I am fine, and whatever you think, and sounds good to me." But it has one fatal flaw. It does not know what it wants. Because wanting, genuine, unfiltered wanting, is the domain of the true self. In a correction-heavy environment, learned very early that its outputs were not welcome, so it went underground, not dead, just dormant, wrapped in protective silence, waiting for a moment when it might be safe to speak again. This is where the story shifts, because what you have been calling stupidity, that blankness, that fog, that maddening inability to know your own mind, is not a deficit. It is a symptom of depth. It is the distance between who you were trained to be and who you actually are, and that distance, that uncomfortable, disorienting gap, is not a flaw. It is the beginning of the journey back. Jung had a phrase for this journey. He called it individuation. The process of becoming who you were before the world told you who to be. But I want to say it in a different way, because I think the language matters. You do not need to find yourself. That implies you are lost. You are not lost. You are buried under years of corrections, expectations, and the polite violence of being told, again and again, in 100 different ways, that your instincts were wrong. You do not need to find yourself. You need to stop moving long enough for yourself to find you. It is not that you are broken. It is that you are bent, and the ache you feel, that low, persistent sense that something is missing, that you used to be sharper, brighter, more alive. That ache is not the sound of something dying. It is the sound of something remembering. So, let us go back to the store. You are still standing there. The cart is still empty, and you still do not know what you want. But now you know something you did not know 17 minutes ago. You know that the blankness is not emptiness. It is fullness, compressed, muted, waiting. Beneath the fog, your brain is not silent, scanning for threats that are not there, bracing for corrections that are not coming, running an ancient alarm system that was calibrated for a world you no longer live in. You know that this was not done to you by one person in one moment. It was done by a system, by classrooms and performance reviews and algorithms, and a culture that measures intelligence by how quickly you can produce the correct answer, and never once asks whether you even had the chance to discover your own. And you know, or perhaps you are beginning to suspect, that the hesitation you feel is not the mark of a broken mind. It is the mark of a mind that was bent but never fully broken. A mind that still knows, somewhere beneath the noise, that the first answer is not always the truest one. That the willingness to not know, to stand in the discomfort of genuine uncertainty, is a form of courage that no performance review has ever measured. I am not going to give you 5 steps. I am not going to tell you to journal or meditate or practice saying no. Not because those things don't help, but because the very act of giving you instructions, of telling you what to do, how to fix yourself, which steps to follow, would be one more correction. One more voice telling you that the way you are, right now standing in this aisle with an empty cart, is not good enough. So instead, I'm going to tell you this. Maybe you don't need to pick anything up today. Maybe the empty cart is not a failure, because only a mind that still has a self, buried faint, but stubbornly alive, would stand in a store full of 10,000 things, and feel the weight of not knowing which one it wants. A fully domesticated mind does not hesitate in the cereal aisle. It just grabs whatever is closest and moves on. You didn't grab. You stood there, you felt the confusion, and you stayed with it. That is not stupidity. That is the opposite of stupidity. That is a self, trying to come home. Leave the cart, walk outside, feel the sun on your face for a second. I'll know what you want. Not today, maybe, but soon. And when you do, it won't be because someone told you the right answer. It will be because you finally stopped waiting for permission to have one. If this felt like a conversation you needed to have today, that is what this channel is for. Not answers, not instructions. Just the right questions, asked at the right volume when the world gets a little too loud. I'll see you next time.